They called him a harmless envoy, but within days, the most feared races in the galaxy realized he was something else, a silent storm they should never have provoked. That's exactly how it began when James Taron stepped off the transport onto Asterith Unity Prime Station. He wore a plain black suit and carried a single small bag, looking almost dull next to the bright and fanciful outfits of alien envoys. But appearances were deceptive. Some noticed his scars, or the calm way he scanned the crowd. Many stared at him like he was an unwelcome intruder. After all, Tero, his homeworld, had only joined the stars 15 years ago, and no one wanted these fast-learning upstarts in the Interstellar Senate. A tall, blue-skinned alien nudged his friend and whispered, "That's the human they sent? He looks so fragile." James pretended not to hear. He'd been in special forces for 20 years. He'd been trained to sense hostility while keeping a polite smile. He used to be something else before he became a diplomat, something that still made him wake up at night, remembering missions no one else could handle. That a four-armed official named Racklow, assigned as an aide, met him with a formal bow. "Representative Taron, I am Assistant Chair Racklow. Please follow me to your quarters. The Senate meets in 3 hours." James just nodded. He noticed how the crowd shifted away as he passed. In many eyes, he saw not just suspicion but outright hate. The older civilizations despised the idea that a newly spacefaring race could sit among them as equals. His assigned quarters were modest, with bare walls and minimal furniture. Once alone, he scanned the room for bugs. He found 6, left them intact but disabled their signals. Let them think he was ignorant. From a small bag, he pulled out a worn poetry book, a simple wooden pencil, and a strange metal medallion etched with ancient symbols. Harmless items that, in his hands, were anything but. He set them carefully on a table, each in a precise spot. Then he typed a secure message to Tero's command. "Arrived safely. Hostility levels high. Will attend first Senate session soon." The reply came almost at once. "We have intelligence that the Zarkan delegation may attempt a provocation." Maintain diplomacy that he allowed himself a tiny grin. The Zarkan were known to have fiery tempers and red, scaly hides that reflected their warlike nature. If they tried anything, they would regret it. He changed into formal diplomatic attire and examined his reflection. At 45, he was fit, hair shot through with a bit of gray, and he carried faint scars that typical diplomats did not. But his eyes, cold, gray, and unreadable, were what set him apart. In the corridor leading to the Senate Hall, 3 Zarkan warriors stood together, staring at him. They drew their claws across their throats in a threatening gesture. James offered them a polite nod and continued without breaking stride. He made his way into a gigantic circular chamber with seats for over 200 species. Tero's seat was off to the side, far from the center of power. He sat without complaint. Aster's Chancellor Morix Asterisk, tall and purple-skinned, with 6 gleaming eyes set around his elongated head, banged his staff for silence. "We welcome a new race today. James Taron of Tero," he announced, voice dripping with condescension. The room erupted in low hisses and mutters. Morix smiled thinly. "Let us hope the human learns his place quickly." James gave a mild smile back, scribbled a quick note on a pad. "Day 1. They have no idea," and said nothing more. 3 days later, a reception was held in the Grand Hall, meant to formally greet him. James sipped an unfamiliar drink, scanning the enormous space. He recognized ambassadors from across the galaxy, but noticed that few wanted to greet the human. They either whispered behind his back or pretended he didn't exist. Then a harsh voice spoke. "So this is Tero's great champion," said Ambassador Trock of the Zarkan, his red scales catching the overhead lights. He was taller than James by a full head, sporting teeth that glinted whenever he sneered. "You don't look like much." James shrugged. "We seldom do, Ambassador." Trock inched closer, puffing out his chest. "Listen well. You and your people are not welcome here. You crawled out of your little world too soon. The galaxy doesn't need you." James noticed the hush that fell over the hall. Many eyes turned to watch. "Perhaps," he answered softly. "But here we are, nonetheless." Trock slapped James's drink out of his hand, shattering the glass on the floor. Everyone froze. "Oops," Trock said. "What an accident." "Accidents can happen to you too if you don't leave." James crouched down to pick up the shards, and dabbed the spilled liquid with a napkin. The spectators snickered. Trock laughed even louder. Look at him, cleaning like a servant. Did Tero send a cleaning droid to do a diplomat's job? Finishing his neat cleanup, James stood. We all make messes, Ambassador, he said in a mild tone. The difference is whether we handle them ourselves or push them onto others. Then he turned and walked away, feeling Trock's furious gaze burning his back. If that was the worst the Zarkin could do, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Late that evening, James was returning to his room when a small, timid alien hurried up, glancing left and right. Representative Taron, the alien whispered. I'm Elru from the Erythei delegation. I must tell you something. The Zarkin planned to. Elru's eyes bulged. He made a choking sound, and James saw a thin dart stuck in Elru's neck. With no time to react, Elru collapsed dead into his arms. James glimpsed a fleeting shadow around the next corner, but it vanished. Station security arrived soon after and declared it a tragic accident. James said nothing. He knew enough to see the pattern. Back in his quarters, he typed a message. Tensions high. Zarkin likely planning violence. Request extraction. His superiors replied in code. Extraction not possible. Survive by any means. That he stared at the words, feeling an old, cold presence awake inside him. They had once called him Tero's deadliest shadow, someone rumored to never fail a mission, no matter how impossible. He tried to leave that past behind, but it seemed he couldn't escape it. Silently, he took the pencil, the poetry book, and the medallion from his bag. He arranged them in a distinct pattern on the table. Quietly, he spoke, I thought I was done with this life. Then, for the first time since arriving, James Taron allowed himself a small, dangerous smile. That night, Zarkin assassins crept through the station's corridors. Their mission was clear, kill the human. Each was a battle-tested warrior armed with a silent sonic blade. They reached James's door, used a stolen code, and slipped into the darkness. The bed was empty, the lights off. He's not here, one hissed. Then the door slid shut behind them with a faint click. The room seemed darker than space itself. Something's wrong, another muttered. A disembodied voice spoke from nowhere, calm and quiet. You should have brought more men. The assassins turned, scanning the shadows. With no warning, the first one dropped, a wooden pencil lodged through his eye. He died instantly, no time to scream. The second assassin swung his blade wildly, only to feel something loop around his neck, a medallion's chain, and snap his neck in a blink. The third managed to switch on a small emergency light and caught a glimpse of James Taron in front of him. That glimpse ended as a hardcover book cracked into his throat, crushing it. The fourth, their leader, backed into the corner, trembling. What are you? He gasped. James's voice was right behind him. Just a diplomat. Station security found nothing amiss in the morning. The room was neat, no sign of struggle, no assassins in sight. James was asleep on his bed, apparently untroubled. The next day, 3 seats in the Zarkin delegation were empty. Trock looked sickly pale during the Senate session. When James stood to speak, he said, Tero proposes a new cultural exchange to avoid misunderstandings. After all, none of us want tragedies. He locked eyes with Trock, who quickly glanced away. Rumors spread like wildfire. More than one guard whispered about how 4 Zarkin killers simply vanished. Others noticed James Taron's unruffled presence, quietly crossing a corridor or calmly sipping water at a gathering. Security footage revealed nothing conclusive, but the whisper he might be more than a diplomat bounced from mouth to mouth. James signaled Tero's command. First attempt was thwarted. Expect they'll escalate. The answer came swiftly, confirmed. Remember who you are. He remembered. And soon, so would everyone else. Over the next week, the station staff, cleaners, cooks, cargo handlers began telling stories. One claimed to have seen the human at midnight, dragging a plastic-wrapped shape that dripped something dark. Another discovered odd earth symbols scrawled near waist ducts, later deciphered as he who walks unseen. The head of station security, a tall, 6-fingered official named Zenril, tried to ignore the rumors, but the disappearance of the Zarkin assassins gnawed at him. Determined to learn the truth, he searched old Tero military archives and discovered a code name, Night Wraith, rumored to be an unparalleled assassin. The deeper he dug, the more chilling the references. Missions with no survivors, unstoppable infiltration, a ghost in human form. Could James be this living legend? Elsewhere, other alien representatives changed their stance toward Tero. Previously hostile faces turned friendly, stammering about how they always respected Tero. One day, a Nexari ambassador, who had insulted humans last week, invited James to a lavish dinner, claiming a deep admiration for Tero. James gave him a measured smile. But recently, you call this ignorant beast, ambassador. The Nexari turned 3 shades paler. A misunderstanding, good sir. That evening, alone in his room, James reviewed a small paper list of names, high-ranking individuals who had openly or secretly pushed for Tero's downfall. He crossed off the Nexari's name and half of the Zarkin. Next in line, Chancellor Morix. Slowly, James brushed a finger over the medallion on the table. Soon, he whispered. Meanwhile, Xenral decided to warn Morix about his suspicions. But if he was right, he risked confrontation with a lethal foe. If he was wrong, he'd look foolish. Fear made him hesitate. Late that night, Morix convened an urgent meeting with 6 top council members, including Admiral Rouse from the Varos fleet and Counselor Aaron from the Zephyrin Collective. Morix scowled at them from behind a security barrier. Our plan is unraveling. The human is not what we expected. The Zarkin's attempt ended in fiasco. 4 of their best disappeared. Aaron's eyes glittered. It was so simple. Kill the envoy, blame it on radicals, then use it to justify attacking Tero before they become too advanced. Morix's lips curled into a sneer. Tero has only had FTL for 15 years, yet each year they double their capabilities. We cannot allow them to catch up. Now the plan is compromised. Admiral Rouse rubbed his temples. What do we know about James Taron? A flick of Morix's hand triggered a hologram of the quiet diplomat. His official record shows a standard service. But an inside source claims he could be that rumored Night Wraith from Tero's Black Files. Rouse sucked in a breath. During first contact with Tero, I heard of a figure the Terrans whispered about. The one they send when success must be certain. Not just an assassin. Asterisk the asterisk assassin. No survivors. No merci. Morix gave a dismissive grunt. Fairy tales. Yet we won't take chances. I've ordered our elite guard to kill him tonight. 20 well-armed specialists. Our fleet is already en route to Tero. In 3 days, we launched the main attack. A young assistant entered, face pale. Chancellor Morix, we found strange letters outside this room. They seem to be from Tero. The translator says, I can hear you. Before they could react, the lights flickered. Only darkness for half a second, then normal lighting returned. The assistant stared at something now resting in his hand, a metal medallion. Sir, he squeaked. I don't know how this got here. What's Night Wraith mean? Admiral Rouse nearly fell into his chair. It's not the name they fear, he whispered. It's the man behind that name. In James Taron's small room, he typed a final code to Tero Command. Hostile forces confirmed. Council fleet heading to Tero. Activating contingency plan that he placed the tablet aside and began setting up. He knew they'd be here soon. He was ready to AT precisely midnight station time. Captain Duran led 20 elite guards through the corridors. Each wore top-of-the-line armor and carried energy rifles that could breach starship hulls. They had orders, kill the human. No one else in the station would stand in their way. A live feed from security cameras showed James seated in the vast garden dome, a place meant to display plant from across the galaxy. The dome was quiet, lit by artificial moonlight. James was reading a battered paperback with a small gardening tool at his side. It all looked so innocent. Xenral, watching from the control room, felt cold sweat on his brow. Admiral Rouse hovered behind him. He's alone, Rouse murmured. Surely he can't defeat 20 specialists in open ground. In the garden, Captain Duran fanned out the squad. They formed a wide circle, weapons aimed. James Taron, Duran announced, by Chancellor Morix's order, you are to be executed for crimes against the Senate. James calmly closed his book, setting it aside. Interesting. I'd like to know which crimes those are. That's none of your concern, said Duran, raising a rifle. Do you have any final words? James stood slowly, looking around at the ring of armed soldiers. Yes, just 5 words. You should have brought more men. The cameras recorded it all. Within seconds, The three nearest soldiers fired, but James wasn't standing there anymore. He darted forward with impossible speed, grabbing the small rake from the ground and driving it into a gap in one soldier's armor. Another whipped around, shooting wildly. James twisted the rifle from the soldier's hands and used it to knock aside two more. "Take him down," Taron roared. The ring closed, but James was everywhere at once. He vaulted over someone's shoulders, jammed the butt of a rifle into another's chest, crashed two soldiers' heads together. Plasma bolts sizzled the air. He ducked and spun, letting friendly fire knock out two. Then, with a single fluid motion, he used an ornamental plant pot as a shield, deflecting more blasts. Another guard lunged with a blade, but James pinned his arm and snapped it. All the while, his face showed no anger, just focused up in the control room. Xenral and Rouse stared in shock. "He moves like a machine," Xenral whispered. Rouse exhaled shakily. "This is the rumored unstoppable soldier Tero once had. It's him." Down in the garden, the last man standing was Captain Taron. Shaking, he scrambled backward. "Please," he begged. "I had no choice." James calmly produced the medallion from his pocket and placed it into Taron's trembling hand. "Tell Morix I'll be paying him a visit next." Then James gazed at the nearest security camera, gave a small nod as if greeting whoever watched, and walked away. Taron collapsed in relief, unsure whether to thank or curse him. Moments later, klaxons blared. Red lights flashed across the station. Inside the main command center, Chancellor Morix raged. "We've lost contact with the entire elite squad. Where is Taron? How can he be in so many places at once?" The big screen displayed an overhead map of Unity Prime Station, dotted with red markers where squads had gone silent. "Lock down everything," Morix cried. "Send a message to our fleet. We must strike Tero at once. Finish them before it's too late." "Yes, sir," a technician said, voice quivering. "Our comm array is offline. We can't reach the fleet." Morix pounded his fists on the console. "Impossible. He's just one man." Meanwhile, in hidden maintenance tunnels, James moved swiftly. He had placed small devices throughout the station. A few were tiny explosives, others jammed long-range transmissions. He had suspected an assault on Tero, and now the seeds of his plan were bearing fruit. He remembered the true details of his mission. Go as a diplomat, gather proof of the Senate's plan to attack Tero, then stop them by any means. He had uncovered everything: secret documents, black market deals, warship schedules. The moment the Senate's fleet arrived at Tero, they would face Tero's own defenses, ones far more advanced than the galaxy realized. All James had to do was keep these traitors busy until Tero was safe in a private bunker. Morix tried to calm his top circle, but fear was in their eyes. Counselor Aaron whispered, "He's unstoppable. We never should have moved against Tero." Morix hissed in frustration. "He's just a savage from a backward planet." But no one believed that anymore. Then a staffer rushed in. "We're receiving a broadcast, sir." "From Taron." Morix paled. "Put it through." The large screens flickered to life. James Taron's face appeared, bruised but calm. "People of the Senate," he said, "your leaders plan to wage war on Tero. You thought we wouldn't fight back. You were wrong." He paused. "Remember who started this?" At that moment, loud bangs echoed through the bunker door. Morix's face lost all color. Meanwhile, across Unity Prime Station, panicked staff evacuated by the thousands. Diplomats from neutral worlds scrambled onto ships, wanting no part of this. The once proud Senate was unraveling. Some hours later, the crisis ended as swiftly as it began. The station was left half empty. Chancellor Morix was found alive but bound, delivered to the central hall. He was forced to stand before a stunned council, with evidence of his secret war plans displayed on massive screens. Also shown, his hush money payoffs and assassination plots. Admiral Rouse, who once doubted Tero, stared at Morix with horror. Now led by a shaken Xenral, the Senate tried to piece itself together. "Where is James Taron?" asked multiple delegates. No one had an answer. He vanished. Some guessed he boarded a stolen craft. Others suspected he was still lurking in the station's shadows. Within days, messages from Tero arrived, confirming that an invading fleet had indeed approached, but was neutralized by Tero's new defense lines. The Senate realized Tero was far more advanced than they'd admitted. Many members cursed Morix for picking this fight. Then, unexpectedly, 20 large ships with unknown design leapt out of FTL around Unity Prime Station. The same red lights flashed, and worried voices cried, "Are they attacking?" But the sensors showed no hostile moves, only a calm encirclement that a single small shuttle undocked from the lead ship and approached. Senate members braced for anything. Instead, from the docking bay emerged a lone human woman. She had silver hair, a gentle face, and walked with a slight limp, supported by a cane. She wore no armor or threatening gear, only a modest suit that looked more like a teacher's outfit than a soldier's. Inside the Senate hall, she approached the center dais. Her voice was clear yet kind. "I'm James Taron, from Tero. I believe you met my son, James, not too long ago." The council fell silent, collectively holding its breath. She gave him a polite nod. "He asked me to take over as Tero's new representative. I used to be a school teacher for decades. I suspect teaching rowdy children and handling rowdy governments isn't so different." She placed a familiar medallion on the table. Everyone recognized it. The one James always carried. She continued, "Those ships you see outside are the first of Tero's new warships. We've named them the Night Wraith class, in honor of my son's older codename. They are here for peaceful cooperation, if that's still possible." Her eyes swept the anxious crowd. "Our terms are quite straightforward. We ask for an end to aggression, fair trade, and the truth about any further attacks on Tero." Silence hung heavy. A dozen ambassadors remembered a quiet man with cold eyes who dismantled squads of trained killers as if it were routine. They also recognized that this woman, soft-spoken and gentle, might be equally dangerous in her own way. They glanced at the warships outside point one by one. Heads began to bow. They realized they had no choice. James Taron smiled gently, retrieving the medallion. "I believe we can build a future together, but let's avoid repeating old mistakes. It's so much simpler to talk than to fight." With that, she stepped back. No force or threat, just an open invitation. The battered remnants of the council signaled their agreement, hoping to avoid another night of terror. The hush that followed was broken only by the hum of the overhead lights. In that stillness, some dared to wonder, where was James Taron now? Had he truly left? Or was he somewhere in the station's hidden corridors, silent as always, ready to step in if these aliens decided to break the peace? No one said it aloud, but the memory of him was enough to keep them in line. And so ended the short but bloody conflict that many called the Night of Shadows. The galaxy learned a truth no one would soon forget. Tero didn't rely on fancy words or naive hopes. When cornered, they could strike with the force of a storm, led by a man who moved like a legend. All that was left to do was see if the Interstellar Senate would respect Tero's offer of peace. If not, well, they had glimpsed the consequences of underestimating a quiet diplomat with a lethal past, and no one ever discovered how many names James Taron had crossed off his list. No official records explained where the bodies of the Zarkan assassins ended up, or what happened to many of Morix's co-conspirators who vanished in the station's maze. But the entire Senate remembered the hush that fell as a single man strolled through their grand halls, calm and unstoppable. They also recalled the silver-haired teacher who arrived after him, carrying that medallion and an air of both warmth and warning. Because from that day forward, the galaxy understood that Tero might appear new to the stars, but they were not helpless. And if you found yourself facing one of their diplomats, you had better think twice before drawing a blade. If you did, you'd be wise to bring a lot more soldiers than you ever imagined. After all, as James himself once said, you should have brought more men.